Welcome back to Orca Boats and the video series on taking lines from the 9-foot Ken Douglas. So in the last episode, episode 2, I took my patterns, I've got them sitting here on my bench. I've got a bit more measurements to do before I can disassemble the baseline ruler suspended above the top of the rowboat. So what I'll be looking at doing in this episode is taking some measurements of the transom, calculating some angles, looking at the stem on the front and taking some plotted lines where the bearding line would be and various other measurements. So let's get to it. Okay, what I'm working on now is determining the shape of the stem here, but also being able to take some measurements off at basic waterline levels. So I've just kind of readjusted the little blocks that are holding in the top of the ruler, or the zero end of the ruler here. Hasn't been lifted up or down, it's still resting on top of the stem. And I've got a straight edge here, which I'm going to mark. But what I need to do is determine sort of where zero line is across the top. I can very easily just take my little ruler again, run it under the aluminum ruler and put a mark on there, and that will be 0. Then I can take this ruler and hold it in place. The second thing I do is I've got my laser level sitting on the floor with a vertical line, and I can just move this ruler back and forth, as you know, forward and back, so that it's basically plumb, straight down from the top to the floor. Nice red line right down the edge. And then I'm going to take my yardstick and I can clamp it with 0 right on my line on the top. So now I have a ruler I'm probably going to be using every 2 inches. So I'm just putting my clamp where not an even number. Same up here, it's on 3, and down here 21. Now I can just, things do move a little bit, but it really is just twisting. Might be worth just putting a dab of hot glue on the bottom here to the floor to hold it in place. This really, I'm not going to be touching this much at all, so I don't have to worry too much about moving it, but I don't want it becoming, accidentally kicking it. So that's what I think I'll do. I think I'll add some hot glue to the bottom. All of this hot glue will break away quite easily once I knock it off the floor. That should be more than enough to hold that from moving once it cools. Okay, I've moved my laser level from vertical to horizontal, and I've just adjusted it ever so slightly on my tripod here so that it is bang right on 4-inch waterline. I will be doing every 2 inches, but at 2 inches really there isn't anything to measure there. So if I was to put my ruler straight across there, I can measure the distance of the line here where the planking meets the stem to the outside of the stem, and it looks to be about close to 1 7/8. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that down on a piece of paper here, that it waterline 4 is 1 7/8. Now to calculate the curve away from the vertical line, I can measure the distance between here and the outside of the stem, and I get 9/16. Then I will just simply move my laser level down to 6 inches. Let it settle there. And the distance on the 6-inch water line to the outside of the stem is 1 7/8 again. And the distance between the board and the outside of the stem is 3/4. And we're just going to keep proceeding down until we have all the measurements across each 2-inch water line. The other option I have is to use calipers and push these between those 2 lines without moving anything, and then measure that off on my ruler. Water line 10, distance is 1 and 12/16. Sorry, 1 and 12/32. And just to double check, measurements, when I start to loft out the outside shape of the forward stem, I can just put up a piece of plywood here and we'll just draw a pattern in here. However, I've still got the stem band on because I haven't rolled it over to paint, in which case I would take it off, but I can just draw outside that. And since we know where the water line is, we can probably put some form of line across here. It's not going to be perfectly accurate, but whoops, writing upside down here. Water line on the stem. So if I have to make several patterns and match them up, I can match up the water line. I just have to subtract the half an inch, no, 1/4 inch thickness of the stem band on the pattern itself. But this will just be to check, after lofting it out, does it closely match sort of just a traced pattern, and work with both of them to come up with the proper shape. Then I'll just move this down using the same plywood. I can move this down. Try and get it off of the other pattern. Have that there. Bring it in. And it's hard to sort of draw a line around a curve. And I would say the water line is there. And that brings us pretty well right to the bottom of the keel. Keel meets up with stem. For calculating out the shape of the inside stem versus the outside stem, I've just made up a rough pattern here, and I'm just going to glue these little tabs onto this side here, sticking out. And the purpose of these 2 tabs will be to put it in and clamp it to my level. So I've got my horizontal level line. Now I can just put on, I'm just going to use my level itself to have that sit. And here I've got this straight edge will made up to the level itself. Square edge in here is flush with the level, and the level is plumb vertical. And the forward face of my level, which is a nice straight edge, is exactly on the 16-inch mark, or 16-inch from 0 at the bow. So what I can do is I had markings 0 here, measuring in. I've got 16 inches from the aft of 0. I can measure forward, and if I plot those 2 on a vertical line and a 16-inch vertical line, then I can kind of get a pretty good shape of what the stem is in between. So now it's time to just start putting some glue stick pointers in here. So I'm putting a whole bunch of sticks, as many as I possibly can on here to get the shape. Now there is a sort of a 4-foot in here. The stem really is just the vertical piece down here. There's a 4-foot in here. attaching to the keel underneath with some major bolts. I am not putting sticks where the bolts are. I would like to be able to mark on this pattern here approximately where the bolts are going through, indicate that on a set of plans. Once I get a few points on the vertical stem, it shouldn't be too bad. It actually is a straight edge, just sloping back slightly. Although the stem is the thinnest up the top, it gets a little thicker as we work towards the 4 foot down below. I've also measured, I don't know if I showed another video, but I measured approximately where the 4 foot ends, really right at this number 4 frame rib. So as much as I have this at the 16, I can, measure back from there to figure out exactly how long, where's the end of the 4 foot. So what I'm going to do while I've got it here is kind of just put a mark on here where I think the angle of the bolt is going through. I mean, a builder could easily just decide on their own where these bolts are going to go through. And with that, before I take it apart, is there anything else I need? The next step in the process is going to be take a pattern of the transom. So I've got the laser level sitting in the bottom. It's running right up the center of the stern post. And it's pretty simple to line it up. This is actually 2 pieces of wood glued together, so there is a line right down the center. I mean, I'm off by 1 millimeter from the bottom to the top. I'm not going to worry about that too much. But now what I need to do is just readjust my vertical post here so that it lines up with that laser line as well. So I'm not too worried now about the vertical point here. What I have measured is down from the baseline to the top of the transom, and I look at the ruler and it looks as 9 foot and 3/4 inches. So, when sitting up on the strong back, the bottom of the transom, the inside edge, will be 9 feet and 3/4 inches from 0 on the forward of the stem. The other thing that will be helpful to know is what is the distance between the baseline 0, the bottom of the ruler, to the top of the transom, which would tell us how far we would need to raise the transom off a baseline. And it looks to be, if I use my ruler right here, 100 inches to 7 5/16. Okay, laser line is right on the edge of the stand. I can adjust left or right. Then I will need to make sure that it is plumb. So I'll move the laser level to the floor. And then, without having to do any massive trigonometry, i.e. 0 distance across here, and figuring out the rake, looks to be about 8 degrees. 8-degree angle between vertical and a slope. We'll mark that down. Okay, I'm pretty well done with all of the structure, rulers, vertical lines and all that. I just need to take a pattern of the transom. Now the thing with the transom is that the larger face is to the inside face. And that would be the best pattern to take, because you'd simply, loft it out or trace it out from the plans onto your laminated up transom boards, and then cut the small bevel angle here based on lofting lines, based on battens coming through here to calculate the angle here. Obviously, would be the simplest would be to just put a large piece of tracing paper or something on the back face here and trace out the transom. The issue I have inside here is that the cross thwarts that support the back seat assembly I've taken the screws out, but this is not just popping off of there. I don't want to get too forceful. I don't know if it's glued on or it's just, you know, amounts of varnish going through the back. It looks like there might be some pine tar behind there to protect the wood. So this is not coming off. It makes it a bit harder to lay, you know, a sheet of scrap plywood onto here, and then use my my sticks, my hot glue sticks, to just take patterns from all of the planking again, like I did in the forms. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to calculate some angles and place some various patterns into here, and then join those patterns together. So for the transom, here's what I played around with. I've cut a few pieces so that I can get the pieces right against the transom, and it was easier to make it in several pieces than in one. So what I've done is I've cut one that's resting on top of the seat thwart. This one can sit on top of here, and we have this little shape here which will fit inside there, and it's kind of pushed up against the bottom edge here, and I don't want it too tight because I got to pull it off, and I don't want it binding on this. But the plan is I just take some hot glue and put some all over here and stick it on there. I'll need 2 layers. Could have gone and cut exactly the thickness needed and all. Ooh, that's hot. Ow. That's going to leave a mark. Couple of pieces just so that it doesn't move. And then to hold these 2 pieces together on the top, I'll just put a cross brace across these 2. So now I've got my laser level running up the center here, so I can use my ruler to mark this vertical center line on there. I can actually mark the back of this piece here for the transom. Gives me the general slope. And then I can start sticking some sticks onto that pattern. Again, I'll just, for the most part, have my pointer sticks hitting the top of the planking, but on many places here it really is just a smooth curve, as all the planking comes flush with the inside of the transom. So I will add as many sticks as I can here, because what I'm thinking is this is too far away, too far amidship to take the pattern of the transom underneath. I would like to get some little sticks in behind there. So I took apart the big pieces in here. I'm just going to put a much smaller block in here, giving me a little bit more room to actually put some sticks in there. And a much smaller stick spanning up and down. Then I've cut a bunch of smaller little pointer sticks that I can use to get underneath. And again, the more points I have on the curve, the better I think we'll get a pattern. But again, we'll go to the planking edge. Now the hog butts up to the transom. It does not sit on top of the transom, so I want to get down into the very corner down in there. Okay, let's see if we can slip it out of here without losing anything. And there we have all the curves for the transom. inside face. Alright, so since I'm taking patterns of things, I might as well just take a pattern of the stern post, just cut a notch in there so I can slip it over the seat cleats, and I'm just going to draw that. It'll give me a general shape of the stern post. Just taking a pattern of a knee, quarter knee in the back here. So that'll conclude episode 3. Next up will be episode 4. We'll take all of these patterns to the drawing board. Thank you very much for watching. Consider becoming a subscriber. Hit the bell button. It's going to remind you of any videos that are uploaded.